Welcome, by the way, to Sales 101. Everything you want to know about sales, but was great to ask. I guess the first thing I'd kind of ask you is just to make it interactive, because we've got a small group over here as well, right? Maybe a couple of reasons about what you're interested in learning today. I've got a whole bunch of kind of slides to go through, but I'm kind of interested in, maybe I'll spend more time on some versus others, to get an idea of some of the things you're looking for, right? So,
First. My name's Alan. I run a recruitment company in the agile space. And one of my biggest challenges is trying to grow a business which is not reliant on me from a revenue perspective. We're a small business for 5 people, and I'm the largest revenue generator. That's been like that for 6 years.
Right.
So that's my next challenge.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm Conf. I'm associated as a software developer, but I work with business very closely with many things.
Right.
I want to basically learn about building a coherent narrative, so it's part of the sales thing to convince somebody to do something.
Run convincing, okay? Anybody else? Okay. Why are you interested?
Yeah, my name is Leland. I'm from Australia Coast. I don't know much about sales. I work in software development teams.
Right.
And I'm just curious to know the size of the world.
Right. Well, there's a huge organization, sales organization in Australia as well. Just kind of new to sales, right? That's new and learn about sales. Anybody else?
I always thought salespeople get paid more than you should notice.
Oh, what's that
I don't know why.
That is a really good one. When you hear my story, you'll figure it out. Get paid more. Why, right? Why?
And it's a good salespeople.
Sometimes you guys get paid too, right?
Sure. My name's Casey. I work as a product owner for an internal product,
Right.
and for a software consultancy. And I'm keen to just learn more about the sales process.
Okay, cool.
How you might go about selling.
Perfect. And that, and I'll be covering these areas off during the session today as well, right? So I kind of was thinking about this because Craig called me up and I go, this is kind of like not on the periphery of the conference. So Craig called me up and said, Inder, let me kind of come over here and talk about sales, right? And I jumped at it, like, well, this is great because I like to think of myself as a bit of a bridge builder, right? I've always found there's a challenge sometimes between sales and delivery and what happens. So I'm a bridge builder. I love to kind of make connections. I jumped at the idea. Then I talked to some more people as well, right? From product owners to developers, and those were consultants to get an idea of like why would this be an important topic as well, right? So I kind of came up with a couple of them. One, I think some of you maybe just want to get into the mindset of a seller, right? Like here's what actually takes place from a sales perspective. What's it like? What's the lifestyle like? What do you do? What happens when that door closes sometimes and you're in a meeting with an exec? What's actually kind of going on, right? The other one is build bridges, right? With your small C customers, in terms of your internal customers, but possibly also your big C customers, the external customers as well, your clients that are essentially paying your bill, right? Selling, by the way, that I've seen over the years, it's also a team sport, right? So I think people used to say it's like the sales guys kind of doing it, but I think as we're seeing things change and evolve over the years, it's becoming more and more of a team sport, and really is the salesperson really involved, right? Me personally, I'm actually on a journey, right? I've been doing sales for a number of years. I somehow got into this profession, right? I've been doing it for a long time, but I'm on a journey right now to kind of work through and help to disrupt sales, right? In the sales process, because it is evolving, it is going through evolution, right? The other thing, by the way, it's not a bad thing to know as well, is a lot of times out there in startup land, there's technical founders. Right? In some cases, you're working with technical founders, or you're thinking of being a technical founder, or a founder itself. And this kind of want to know a little bit more about the sales process itself. The other thing, by the way, is also taking place right now as well is the gig economy. Right? So freelancers going out there trying to sell your services to sell you. It's kind of important to kind of know, the process of approaching sales and what it actually entails. Kind of pay your personal bills as well and grow your own business. And I'm also working right now, by the way, with Melbourne University. They did a survey of a lot of their students, what they found was about 40% of the students, right, are thinking of actually doing their own thing versus working for a corporation, right? You go into secondary schools as well. My son does not want to work for a company. He wants to do his own gig, right? So you're seeing that kind of evolve as well, right? I kind of asked, and really I want to hear from all of you as well. So a few more reasons as to why sales. Okay. So I will tell you that when I was in high school, right, I mean, I love science, everything about science. I thought I was going to be a doctor, right? And somehow I ended up in this like sales profession kind of career, right? I actually, you know, it was interesting, but when I was kind of going through high school, there was quite an evolution that was starting to take place, right? And the evolution was really around technology just kind of coming into being, right? This is kind of back in the, so high school was probably, for me, was about between 81 and about 85, right? And this is back in Canada, right? At that time, there was, I think computers were just starting to come to the classroom. They were just trying to start to roll out some classes around computers and computer science, data processing at the time. They were just trying to do the basics around bits and bytes. Had kind of there was punch hole cards that eventually became cards that were marked as cards that you kind of write on. And we go into this like hopper, right, and that would be your code that would kind of go through, right? Then after I finished high school, went to university, you know, did my math, computer science in Canada. I actually had an internship as part of my as part of my career at that point in time. And this was my first desk, right, back in IBM, right? And this is more to kind of give you a bit of a visual about where technology was at that point in time. I think it's important to kind of know about how technology has evolved, right, and how the sales has kind of evolved through that journey as well, right? But my first desk at that time was, you know, a PCXP computer. It was a green screen, a proprietary network at that time, right? There was no TCP/IP, right? So no internet at that time. We had proprietary client-server environment, right? I had access to email through DB2 and SQL at the time. A hard drive, right? Pretty small. At that time, Microsoft had not started selling their version 1 of Microsoft at that time. This is about 1986, right? There was a DOS operating system, which in fact was developed by Microsoft licensed by IBM. And at that time, you know, printers were doing lines per minute versus pages per minute, right? Just kind of flowing them out. That was headquarters that was built at that time. My first phone was an answering machine with a cassette recorder. This kind of gives you a picture of like where technology was at that point in time, right? If you fast forward in terms of what I'm kind of doing now, I'm now actually kind of doing my own business, my own gig. I actually help startups, I help businesses, just kind of help them with sales, setting their sales environment, but also selling for them as well. I'm working with a company called Code for Australia, right? That is really the intersection of citizens, developers, UX consultants, and government, right? It's really trying to bring change into government from the outside in. I actually help to sell some of the Code for Australia services, right? I'm also working with Melbourne University as part of their Melbourne Accelerator program. I'm helping them with partnerships and kind of help to bridge the accelerators and the startups, with the founders, with the investors, with the corporates, right? And that whole ecosystem from a startup perspective as well, right? It's something I'm passionate about, something that I care about as well. I left my corporate life about a year ago and actually worked on a startup as well. I went to an accelerator with Blue Chili. And I guess I came out of that, I kind of found that one of the things that's kind of a challenge out there right now that a lot of founders are having is just around selling. Right? So I thought, okay, let me make a pivot this way and go through a journey of trying to kind of see if I can help along the way and disrupt as well. I kind of spend two-thirds of my time on paid gigs, and about a third of my time on pro bono, just helping the community out and mentoring different founders as well. So, you know, why sales is stressful, right? In 27, I feel just fine, right? It is a stressful life and kind of going through that, right? And there are some challenges along the way as well. As I mentioned, it wasn't something that I was thinking of in terms of from a career perspective, just to actually kind of jump into sales, right? I was really passionate about technology at that time. It was the early days. There was a lot happening on the ground, a lot of evolution that was starting to take place. And what I found out was, as I started getting involved in the early part of my career, I worked for IBM for almost about 24 years. Well, if I worked for 25 years, I would have retired. It was time to leave, right? After that, I actually worked for Gartner here in Australia for about 3.5, almost 4 years, right? Kind of doing frontline sales. And when I first kind of started working with IBM and kind of started working in one of the branches, in a technical area, so the first 7 years of my career was primarily technical, right? Walking onto sites, helping retail customers, right? Either install technology, implement technology, and also change technology as well as they went through that process. And what I kind of recognized was, why is the sales guy getting all the money, and why is he getting all of the great gadgets and the sandboxes and all, whatever new things were kind of rolling out, the sales guy was getting it first. And I was starting to think about, well, what's kind of really going on, right? And there was also challenges that were happening between sales and services and delivery, right? And as that process was kind of going on, for me, kind of it became a bit of an eye-opener as well, in terms of, this is where I'm starting to see some change start taking place, and we start making an impact, right, with customers. And it became more known to me as well, saying, there's two types of jobs, right? There's one where you're either working with customers or you're not working with customers, right? And essentially, it was the sales guys that were essentially starting to drive a lot of the change forward, but I also saw there was a lot of progression of career that was taking place as well from a sales perspective, right? I'm not sure if you see that as well with some of your organizations, but something that I was starting to see as well. Right? And there's also this debate going on around, deep technical skills versus starting to have more general skills as well. Eventually, that kind of evolved like a T-bar, right? So you actually had some form of, depth of skills, but you also had like horizontal and skills as well from a breadth perspective. What I'm hearing now is really about the comb, right? The comb is really around, you've got some really deep areas, right? But you also have all these micro skills as well along the way. So for me, that kind of changed, that I started to kind of evolve in, right, into sales, right? Yeah, I mean, you actually get a lot of no's, right? So it is a career where you're actually going to get a lot of rejection, but at the same time, it helps kind of go through in terms of what a championship mindset should be. So how you kind of think about growth and how to kind of drive change as well, right? Yes, there's risk and rewards, there's trips and perks, and there's also an area around the sales culture that you're part of as well. Right? I'll also mention as well, just as I've kind of gone through my journey, I've also had kind of my taste of success, but I've also had kind of my taste of failures as well, right? When I started with Gartner, probably about 4 years ago, I had a territory. It was a mixed bag of territory. There was only 5 of us in Melbourne at the time that were looking after commercial accounts. We went through went through about almost 3 months of sales training, right? So they kind of walk you in the classroom, go through the whole spiel about here's what the company is all about, and also kind of teach you a methodology as well about selling. I think that was very important to the company. So as salespeople, we all have a language so we can all talk about, and also roll up to management as well. Right? After I finished kind of the training, I actually went on site to a client. The process kind of went through was your manager would kind of go with you, your sales manager, and it would really be where they would show you, they would share, and then you would do on your own. So kind of a 3-step process you kind of go through. Right? One of the first accounts that I went to, I won't name it, right? The very first meeting that we had, they said, we are canceling the contract. That was my first account. Holy jeez, right? This is crazy, right? Yeah, and so that became a big hit, right away. So right now, I've got a quota to be made. My first customer, right, that I'm being assigned to, and my boss is there actually leading the meeting. The customer essentially saying, we are not going to be renewing this, right? That was it. That sale was over. I tried really hard, right, to kind of save that as best as I could, but there was nothing. And even the person we were meeting with wasn't even the decision maker. It was a gatekeeper kind of telling us this, right? So we didn't even have access to the decision maker at all, right? I tried to recover that account over the course of that year, could not do it at all, right? I tried a number of ways to try to get back into the account, and it became quite a challenge, right? Eventually, it's a point of, are you going to do it or not do it, and then ended up kind of giving up, right? I did try it a year after that as well, and eventually what ended up happening was Gartner purchased Corporate Executive Board, or CEB at that time, and they were actually CEB clients. So eventually they came back to us through a different means, right? I had another situation. where we were also responsible for driving kind of new logos and new business as well. And going through that process, I'll share with you again a bit of a success, but also a bit of failure and mistakes along the way too. I think it's important to kind of share a lot of times salespeople come up and they talk about all the wonderful things they've done, all the money they've made, but I'll tell you there's years where it is challenging, it's an off year, and there's mistakes you made, you learn from those, you kind of grow from those as well. Right? I had another client, again it was a new logo, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to get into this account with a number of meetings, whether it's through email, through LinkedIn, trying to use warm intros along the way, and no response, like nothing. It was always cold, it was always dead silent, right, coming back from that. Eventually I got a contact who was on the board of directors, that then sent a note over to the CFO, that then sent it over to the CIO, and eventually I was able to get a response back. It's like, Inder, leave us alone, all right? And they said kind of leave us alone, because they were busy. They were working through some crazy stuff at that point in time, right? But I said, look, in October, right, come back, and we'll be happy to meet. But they put me off for almost like 6 months, right? And we did meet, right? And we went up to an event, and I learned more about their business. And they actually had me go through the hoops. And they said, Inder, one of the things we want you to do, which is important from a client perspective, before we have vendors kind of sign up with us, we want you to spend time in their business, right? So I actually spent a whole day right in one of their locations, right? Talked to the manager, got a feeling of the location, people coming in, people walking out. He walked me through their systems. I had a really good kind of idea of what was really taking place on the ground, right? That became very valuable. I went back through that process with them and said, this is what I've kind of learned, right? And they became clients, right? Now, one of the things we were also responsible from a sales perspective was also expansion as well. So the following year, right, I said, okay, now, I've kind of made some budget along the way because they've actually become a client of ours. It's a new logo, fanfare, everything, rang the bell, it was fantastic. But then the year after that, it's now time for expansion. It's not enough just to maintain, you must now grow revenue as well, from a sales perspective, right? And I think one of the things I learned along the way in that process was you've got to be careful about being pushy and crossing the line, right, at a period of time that says, is it for you doing it for the business or are you doing it for the client, right? And I probably went a little too far and didn't listen along the way. In fact, they actually ended up canceling the contract, right, the following year, right? So again, a bit of a lesson learned in terms of there are lines, you have to be careful about pushing this and really protecting your clients versus the business, looking from a longer term perspective versus the short term, right?
How did you get that feedback? Like in terms of along the way that they were going to cancel?
Oh, it was through an ask. It was through an ask. I actually asked, right? Through the process as well.
Did they tell you why?
No, it was you knew. Yeah, you know that it was not listening, right, to really what they were telling you. These were some of the boundaries that kind of existed, and you could read the signs. I'm talking about technology because what I'm starting to see as well is as technology has evolved, right, the sales process has evolved as well. Right, there's this great book. It's called The Third Wave by Steve Case. Right, I'm not sure if you read it or not, but I just kind of put a couple of words there and an excerpt there from the book as well. Right, and by the way, I mean there's reviews here by Sheryl Sandberg, Warren Buffett, right, about the book as well. Right, but the entrepreneurs of this era are going to challenge the biggest industries in the world and those that most affect our daily lives. They'll reimagine our healthcare system and retool our education system. They will create products and services that make our food safer and our commute to work easier. Right, but if this new generation of entrepreneurs is to succeed, the playbook from the second wave won't do. Right, and I'll kind of walk through the waves as well. Right, the playbook they need instead is the one that worked during the first wave, when the internet was still young and skepticism was still high, when the barriers to entry were enormous, and when partnerships were a necessity to reaching your customers, when the regulatory system was coming to grips with the new reality and struggling to figure out the appropriate path forward. Right, this was in 2016. Right, so in 3 years, a lot has still changed along the way as well. Right. And so in terms of an agenda, right, I think I'll try to go through some of this probably more quickly as well as we go through this. But it was to talk through about the evolution of technology and sales, right? Kind of what are different sales structures and roles in an organization, the 5 types of sales professional profiles, talking about different selling methods that happen from a B2B perspective, right? What's the difference between marketing and sales, right? Which is important. Talking about funnel, marketing funnel versus a sales funnel. what is a sales lead and dashboard and metrics and what does that mean? In some cases, from a sales perspective, actually making budget and quota, right? So if you're setting out to make plan, what does that look like in terms of the life and the day and the week and the month rhythm of a salesperson, right? I think one of the questions here, right? How and what do salespeople earn, right? And tips and techniques to kind of get the first meeting as well, right? It was interesting, but just hearing from some of the things in the main session as well, from Christine, right, and also from Mick as well. I saw, like he mentioned the word customer a number of times. Get to your first customer, right? Get that meeting, get that to experiment with as well, which I think is very important. And I think there's tools and mechanisms you can kind of use along the way to help you get to those customers as well, right? And then just talk a little bit about the future of sales as well, right? We started a bit late, but I'll try to kind of go through this fairly quickly so it gives you kind of a broad overview of 101. And I'll provide some links as well in the Trello board so you kind of follow afterwards as well. That's fair. Okay. We talked about kind of the three ways, right? So I kind of talked a little bit about my high school years, right? And after I finished high school, like essentially it was 85, where I was in university, but I was working with IBM at the time. So it's interesting, but in these three ways of the internet, this has been my career going through from a technology perspective as well, right? The first wave was primarily driven by people, products, platforms, partnerships, and perseverance. In the second wave, I saw that the partnerships and perseverance was kind of on the way, right? And in the second wave was really things that were born out of a dorm in some cases, right? That this kind of plowed through and became life, right? And the third wave, right, is kind of going through that process that you kind of see in the first wave as well, but policy is kind of being introduced here as well, right? And I think I think a way of kind of looking at that, as an example, I think where policy becomes important. Uber, for example, they didn't follow policy at all. They just kind of plowed the way through, but eventually kind of regulation kind of caught up, right? But I think policy will become even more and more important, especially given things around data, right? That will become an important aspect as well. And obviously perseverance is important there as well. I think all to keep in mind over here is just that there was we're kind of going through kind of three ways. There was the building of the internet wave, right, which I remember, by the way, as well, in terms of the first time, it's like, what's e-commerce, right? Like, I can't believe I give my credit card on the internet, and then, I won't be ripped off, right? I feel that was freaking people out. It literally was. There was a research on this that was being published saying, it's okay, right? But it was a big mindset change that took through, and perseverance along the way as well, right? And then obviously, internet everything. Everything has become, kind of connected. But at the same time, everything's become even a lot more open as well, right? Everything was behind the scenes. Right now, technology is open to everybody. Right? We're actually at a very fascinating time right now. That parallels some things that were going on from a sales perspective, right? So this is back in the 80s when I was in IBM as well, and I started in the early 90s as well. When technology vendors, primarily were selling hardware and like millions, dollars, of hardware. Mainframes were $10 million. A mid-range computer was like $1 or $2 million, right? And bundled into that was services, right? So services, quite frankly, were free, right? In the early days, right? It was all packaged in as part of the solution, right? When government contracts started coming up, there was an unbundling of services from the hardware and the software that started taking place, right? So selling kind of evolved. It evolved into more relationship from consultative at that point in time, right? And I'm not sure if any of you have watched Mad Men, right? But it's fascinating to kind of watch Mad Men in terms of what's happening from the advertising area. And it was actually interesting, there was a couple episodes there where, in fact, an IBM sales guy kind of came in, and they had to kind of go through a whole rebuild of a data center to bring this mainframe in. It was actually an advertisement that took place in the papers saying, we now have a computer, and we have the ability to kind of now have data and insights in advertising, right? This is back in the 60s, right, at that point in time, right? But relationship selling became more and more important as well. There was an evolution taking place with a lot of the large corporations where teams were kind of being formed around the customer as an advocate for the customers as well, right? So really, it was like you really now are an advocate for the customer and actually being a bridge back to the organization, right? In the 2000s, it started moving into solution selling, right? So a lot, some of the larger vendors, what started taking place was you essentially had silos that were taking place within the large organization. what was really required now was to bring these silos together and offer a solution back to the customer. So whether that was in the banks, right, from a finance perspective, and teller solutions and ATMs, or whether it was in the airlines around a kiosk solution, right, or it was a point of sale from a front end and a back end in a retail environment. So that was an evolution that was starting to take place as well, right? And I will also say as well is, along the way, there's some more kind of recent, selling methods that have also been kind of evolved as well. From spin selling, value selling, and challenger method as well. I won't go through all of these, but I'll give you kind of a slide that gives you a flavor of what this looks like. In terms of sales roles in an organization, right, this kind of breaks out the different types of roles that actually exist within a large sales organization. And when you think about it from an extreme level as a founder that's just starting off, right, a lot of times they're doing many of these roles, right, that eventually will evolve as a company starts growing as well, right? So I'll kind of just walk you through at a high level in terms of how the different types of sales roles exist. Because a lot of times you may categorize it saying it's one salesperson, but there's actually a lot of different roles that exist from a sales perspective. So obviously there's outside, field sales roles, and there's inside sales roles as well. From a field perspective, essentially you are visiting the customer. From an inside perspective, you're essentially over the phone, or which has evolved to digital and social media, right? There's indirect sales, and there's also direct sales, right? From an indirect perspective, you're primarily dealing with a partner, a channel partner, or a distributor, right? And from a direct perspective, you're dealing directly with the end user customer, right? And then as you start getting into direct sales, you'll actually start segmenting your accounts out as well, right? You may have a strategic account, right, which would be like a Coca-Cola of the world, and a global account, or you may have or a Kohl's, for example, maybe a major account, as an example.
What's the hunter-farmer analogy?
Yeah, so the hunter-farmer analogy is a farmer is probably there. One is primarily there to kind of keep current with current set of existing accounts, right? But still try to grow those accounts that they've got as well. From a hunter perspective, right? It's really to drive new business. Like you're out there, you're trying to trying to find new business, new logos, and then you're doing it tough out there. It's white space.
And they're separate roles.
They can be separate roles. In some places, it could be one person depending on the scale of the operation. If you're a new startup, you're going to be in hunter mode.
Yeah.
Right? You can also get specialized roles as well, right, within an organization, right? So Australia Post, for example, I think somebody was talking about, right, as well, right? You'll probably have different divisions within that as well, with different product offerings. You'll have very specific roles. Some cases that are very transactional, in some cases that are systems oriented or even product oriented as well, right? Then with inside sales area as well, you'll have roles which are again outbound. You're calling outbound. Perhaps there's inbound coming, so there's traffic coming through either a website, right, and you're picking that off, right, or in some cases you're serving a customer with customer service as well, right? I will tell you that I have probably been the majority of the roles, right, on here as well, and or either I've been them or I've actually led teams across these as well. Right? And then obviously with different roles, you're not going to have different types of salespeople that are within those roles as well, right? This was a study done a couple of years ago. There was a survey with about 6,000 reps and across 44 attributes, right? And it's interesting, but there's lots of ways of looking at the different types of roles, right? So one way could be, this is the type of salesperson I'm dealing with, in my own organization. It could be perhaps you're looking at hiring, and if you're going to be hiring, what would make sense for your company and your organization, or if you're a founder, what are you going to be looking for in that person as you go through that as well, right? And in some cases, perhaps you're trying to build a bridge internally with a salesperson. This is a kind of a way of trying to categorize some of the salespeople you're perhaps dealing with and saying, now that I kind of have an idea of who they are, right, maybe I might change my approach a bit better as well, right, in terms of how to approach this person.
So the light grey there is for the high performance person attribute.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there's a little bit things that are going on over here. It's anything you're kind of pointing out as well. But there, as part of the study, looked at core performance versus high performance as well, right? And they found that high performers were ones, right, that were challenging, right? That's coming with new ideas, new ways of thinking, right, and challenge the customer. So look at it, pushes the customer, right? Loves to debate, understands the customer's business, and always has a different point of view of the world. But you have to be careful, right, with that method, right? And that type of person, and I've tried as well, You know, and so I've succeeded, but there's been change. So it's a learning process of experimentation once you go through that, right?
So they know on relationship.
And low on relationship as well.
They don't work as hard. They
Yeah.
burn their bridges and they
That's true.
push.
That's true, and they push, right? And then there's the lone wolf, right? You have to be careful over here as well. They can leave a trail of damage to your organization. And I've seen this in organizations that I've been before as well, right? They have come into an organization, they have completely blown away the targets, right? And then they leave, and they have left a trail of damage and reputation that is hard to correct. Remember the story I told you about the first account I went to? Yeah, well that was one of the challenges, is like they left a trail of destruction when I first came in. So it's kind of important to kind of get an idea of, there was a different frame of salespeople as well.
Is this a particular type of organisation?
Or this was across different organizations.
Oh, across.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, with this one company. Yeah, yeah. I think it was across 90 companies.
How long ago is that?
A couple of years ago.
Sorry?
A couple of years ago.
Do people like naturally fall into these categories based on their like personality types?
Look, I would say yes, you can. But at the same time, you can develop some of these methods as well along the way too, right? Like I have, you know, there are methodologies. For example, there actually is a challenger methodology, right? It's called the challenger method, right? So even though you may be in one, you can actually start kind of building up your strength in another area as well, and using those methods as well. But in some cases, they're just naturally people that are friendly and buddy and relationship, right? To the point where they're helping the customer remove house in some cases. Right? I've not seen that, right? Out in the field, right?
Did they close the sale?
Yeah, I mean they're quite buddy, right? I'm going to kind of move a little faster as well. This is one method as well called it's value selling, right? And I've got the value selling method as well. You can't. This is kind of blurred out. You can't see it, but I'll kind of describe it too as well, and kind of how it fits mentally in an image that I use a lot of times when I approach customers as well. But this is a value selling methodology. It can also be used, by the way, even as you're gathering the requirements along the way as well. Pain points, business issues, right? The value, the personal value, the power. Essentially, what you're going through is you're actually going through a structured sales call, right, in a meeting with a customer over a number of meetings. And as you kind of go through this process, you're trying to uncover what the main business issue is, trying to understand that person's specific problem they've got, their priority. In some cases, there may be an anxiety question that says, what happens if things don't change, right? For example, if they're trying to reduce, increase revenue or reduce costs, right? Trying to get an idea about some of the problems that are happening, the solutions in their point of view. So you're not telling the solution, they're actually coming up with the solution. What that means back to the value to the customer, to the business, but also their personal value as well, right? So if they resolve some of these things that are happening, what does that mean back to them? Is it a promotion, right? Do they get their bonuses? What does it mean from a personal perspective back to them as well? Then power, right? Which means you have access to power to actually make that decision as part of the buying process. And then is there actually a plan? Is there a plan that you can work through that you both agree with, right? That the sale will move forward. And the right-hand side, this is called a value prompter. And so I actually use that image in my mind as well. The left side is really the top part is the business, the pain points, the problem, the solution, the value, the power, and the plan. And then these are different questioning techniques you use to kind of go through and build up this repertoire to actually build a sale in a large organization, right? So if I'm trying to sell to Australian Post, for example, right, which we've done, right, we would actually use this approach to kind of actually get into the account, but then also be able to tap into the mind, right, of the person that's actually you're selling to as well. Right? So again, it's a methodology. Okay? And there's a number of methodologies that you can kind of learn through along the way as well. Right? I'm going to move a little bit into kind of marketing and sales, right? And by the way, it used to be marketing versus sales. It really, which is very important right now, the integration of marketing and sales together, right? So marketing from a branding perspective, creating awareness, lead nurturing and generation. I've seen it fall into marketing, but I've also seen in some cases where it really becomes, it has to have integration with sales as well. Then there's sales support. And from a sales perspective, it's like, that's where you've got the direct client contact, you're scoping projects, closing contracts, and you're not essentially an advocate for the client, right? I won't go through all of this. I'll go through this kind of quickly as well, but some of you may have seen this before. But this is how we kind of purchase today, right? You'll probably start through some form of an awareness, right? And looking at it on Google or on a website. You'll probably start clicking through away. And through that, you'll read a bit more, you'll get some interest, and maybe there's an intent that's being formed. Then somewhere along the way, you'll probably make some form of a decision, right? And then that builds loyalty, and you'll share that back with somebody else, which kind of goes through the process in the life cycle, right? From a marketing perspective, right? But that's kind of today's customer journey from a buying perspective in social media, right? With that kind of comes a funnel, right? And the funnel is really around the lead generation model, right? So in this case, it kind of takes you through the same things we kind of talked about, but it goes from an inquiry to a lead, right? From a marketing perspective, where it's now ready for sales, where it's a qualified prospect, which goes to a customer, and it becomes a numbers game through the funnel as you kind of go through, right? The funnel is kind of more broad at the top, and as it's going through a filtering process, right? Through marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, opportunities, to customers, right? But the numbers become important, because when you start having metrics and numbers, there's things that you can start doing in terms of what that means. Right? So in terms of sales lead qualification, right, there's some simple ways of doing it, but there's also some pretty complicated ways of doing it as well. A simple method is just using the bank, right? So if you're going into a car dealership, they're probably using this along you as well, right? What's your budget? Can you buy? What do you need this for? And when are you ready to buy? Kind of from a timing perspective, right? But this is a methodology that you kind of use, right? As you go through, you say, this is now a valid sales lead, right? I will tell you that there's probably one more thing that can be added on over here, which is kind of important. And this is something that I've used with sales teams that I've managed before as well, which is a compelling reason to act. There's a reason as to why they're doing this, right? If that's missing, you may not be at the right point yet, right? So to be truly valid. After you've kind of gone through that, the sales funnel stages around awareness, discovery, evaluation, intent, purchase, and loyalty, that then falls into pipeline stages. Now you're actually moving into a system method where a lot of these things that have kind of been out there in terms of through the buying journey are now actually in a specific system or a tool in a pipe, right? And you'll see in some cases, for example, discovery actually has 3 stages. And the reason why you do that process is because now you can start doing some analytics to understand what the problems may be. Right? As you're kind of going through that process, right? So you can start off with prospecting, qualifying leads, having an initial meeting with your client, doing a discovery, and get your needs, making an offer, and you're kind of going through the process right to where you're delivering the product as well. Okay. I know I'm going fast, but that's okay, right? This would be a sample deal dashboard for kind of one sales rep, right? So as an example, right, you kind of go through, and by the tool being used here is PipeRight, which I've used before as well, which I think is fantastic for prospecting, right? May not be a great system just from a marketing and CRM perspective, but it is fantastic just for your pure prospecting, right? But you're making kind of initial contact with the customer, you're qualifying them, you're presenting, evaluating, closing, and asking for referrals. It gives you an idea of the deals, where they are in the process, how many there are, and the kind of the total value, right? This is kind of from a salesperson perspective, this is something they would live and kind of breathe out of as well, right? You can actually go into each of these deals, right? It'll tell you what's happening, emails that have gone through, open rates, click rates, all that as well. You can create templates against this. There's a lot of things under the deal that you can kind of get to as well, right? Once you've kind of had your deals, right? The next thing you've kind of getting to over here is now you've got deal tracking and metrics, right? Along the way, right? In this case, what's now happening is for one salesperson, this is kind of giving you an overall summary from one salesperson, right? In terms of their average deal size, the number of deals that have been opened, their average lead to customer conversion, the average days that have been spent, right? Now imagine, for example, if you had this for more than one salesperson, right? Because you probably have a team of 5 people or 10 people in an organization, in some cases that are smaller, with a number of salespeople. And what if one salesperson actually had 12 meetings held and 11 proposals, but another salesperson had 24 meetings held and 11 proposals, right? You can now start doing some analytics saying, why does that salesperson have way more, the conversion rate different? Is it different territory, different segment? Is it the nature of how that person is approaching the meeting? You can now start having coaching sessions with that salesperson as well, right? As a founder, right, so if you get to a smaller issue with one salesperson doing that, that becomes a challenge of trying to diagnose what the problems may be, right? Was it with the process, is it with the salesperson, or was it with something else as well? So there's benefits in having numbers, right? The other great thing about having numbers as well is you can now start going through and that salesperson now has the ability to start forecasting. They can now start predicting some behavior based on metrics they've got as well. So you can now start going through and say, okay, this is what I want to accomplish for the year. Here's my budget. Here's my average deal size. Here's my number of won deals that are required. Here's my prospect to win ratio, right, which is 4 to 1. Here's how many prospects that are required. Here's my lead to prospect, right? You kind of go all the way through and say, by the way, I need 400 leads, right for marketing, and it's going to cost me this much per lead as well, right? To say, this is to drive my $1 million, this is the investment that I need to make it as a business case to kind of go forward as well, right? But again, this is stuff that's going through from a sales management perspective, right, within an organization, and it rolls up, right, to an organization. Now, once you start making that, we're now getting to the conversation around making money, right? Which I think you want to kind of hear about as well. So from the making money perspective, right, there's a number of rules that kind of exist in terms of what's important in terms of how to define a compensation plan to drive the right behavior. It's got to be aligned to what you're trying to drive. You don't want to change a sales plan on a salesperson mid-year, right? Because they're trying to make their numbers, and obviously it's their bread and butter, it's their salary as well. Have to be simple, clear, and you don't want to put caps on it. There cannot be a cap on a salesperson in terms of what they can achieve, right? So, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go 3 minutes more, right? And then I'll cut it. Okay?
Why can't there be a cap on it?
What's that?
Why can't there be a cap on it?
Because if you put a cap on it, you're putting a cap on somebody. Wouldn't you love somebody to bring in mega $billion, which by the way they take a commission from?
Yeah, but maybe as a startup you can serve that.
As a startup, it may be a little bit different. And as a startup, you also maybe move into an equity relationship as well, right? There's probably other ways to be able to align that behavior. Right? Good question. In terms of sales compensation, so there's different types. It could be based on profit, it could be based on commission, it could be equity, it could be a base and a commission component, it could be linked to OKRs, right? It could be a team plan, or it could be activity based. This is, by the way, a representative example, right, of at an enterprise level, right, Australia and U.S. and the North American market, right, of possible compensation.
Are you feeling the pressure?
I am. I'm going fast. I will do one more, right? I'll leave you this one because
I think one of the things you can do too, Inder, is just deliver this last point, and then you can actually take the people out into the hallway and if he wants to keep going, the room needs to choose. So.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll leave you with one. Okay, I'll leave you with one. The one I'll leave you with is
on your report,
what's that?
I can pick up on
That'd be perfect, because you're going to be going to the art of conversation, and building rapport and credibility is really important, right? The one I will leave you with, though, is how to get that first meeting. So it's just one tip, and it's called the basho, right? Is it showing up? It's called the basho, right? So the basho is a technique that can result in open rates of between 30 to 85% to 85%, right? So it's an attempt to get a cold email to gain the attention of a prospect or customer to get a meeting set on their calendar, right? It has to be very carefully written and researched. You got to usually send it between either 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after the hour, and you should usually test that email on your mobile phone. You can actually go onto Google and you'll find basho samples as well. But essentially, this is what it is. I've used it at the CEO level, the CFO level, and it actually works. I've had a response back from the CEO in 10 minutes of a large corporation, right? I read with it. So for example, today we had Nancy, right, who was like the CFO from Cleveland University, right? One of the things on her mind was reducing waste, right? That was her language. It was in her mind as well, right? Could almost be I read with interest, right? Maybe it was the session you were at today as well, and the article around reducing waste in the whole area around universities. I thought I would reach out to you, right? Your sentiments regarding that, right? And you can kind of talk about that a little bit further as well. It would be possible to have a short discussion in your strategy and what's the best way to validate it in your office. You're not using a deer, right? But you're going to a high value prospect and you're talking at the exact same level that you're at as well, right? So it's not about trying to reduce yourself, you guys at the same level. The other technique here as well, this can actually be used as a phone call as well. So you can actually call up a CEO and actually you can actually just read this out to them, right? Versus actually sending an email. A lot of times they'll say, "Who are you?" and maybe talk a bit further as well, and tell me more. So it does work. Right? Anyways, thank you.